This reading is from Whispers from Eternity by Paramhansa Yogananda. This is entitled, Rock Me in the Cradle of All Space. Rocked in the cradle of the blue-colored past, bright-colored present, and dim gray-colored future, I, the child of eternity, am restless. I strained ineffectually the feet of my power. At last I succeeded in jumping out from duality's cradle of delusion. Thou hast caught me in thy infinite arms to rock me in all space. I am thy babe of eternity, safe now in the cradle of thy omnipresent bosom. And this is from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyananda. These are parallel commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. This is entitled, Self-Effort Too is Needed, which is a great title, but it's of the wrong reading. Sorry. The bookmark got shifted. There we are. I remember once Anandiji, for those of you who know her, she's left the body since not too long ago. She was doing the reading for Nayaswami Dharmarajan, who was ready to give the talk, and so of course they, had known for at least a week that this was happening, and Bharat had prepared his talk, and then she opened the book and she read the title just like I did of a different week, and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's a different week. That would have been exciting for Bharat, wouldn't it? Read a completely different reading and now give your talk." So, excuse me. Self-reliance versus self-reliance. Little s versus big S. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Last week we considered the need for attunement with God, with the gurus, with the wisdom of others, until we make that wisdom our own. There is a strong and in fact valid belief nowadays in the need for standing on one's own feet, rather than depending weakly on others to carry us by their strength. Swami Kriyananda was once asked, "What is the best yoga posture?" "That one," he replied, "which sets you squarely on your own 2 feet." Our strength must come from within. If that strength comes from the ego, however, instead of from soul consciousness, it is like a guitar string without its sounding board. The notes it emits will be thin and feeble. Our strength must come from within, but must be coupled with recognition of our inner link with broader and higher realities. The Bhagavad Gita says in the 10th chapter, "Everyone in this world whose life is glorious or prosperous or powerful, know that his achievement is but a little spark from the great sun of my effulgence." Jesus, in talking to his disciples, emphasized also the power of attunement with his own consciousness as a ray of the divine. For this ray had descended already through him in response to their devotion. It was a sign that God was already, quote, listening to them with receptive attention. And it did not require to be wooed in that way any longer. In the passage preceding the one we read last week, Jesus said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman, the one who harvests. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit he purgeth it," meaning he picks the fruit, "that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean again through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except that it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except that ye abide in me." This was the meaning of Paramhansa Yogananda's counsel also when speaking more intimately to the disciples of the need for attunement with him. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om. Om. morning to you all. Good morning to all of you online. We have sort of what seems to be two opposite thoughts, two opposing thoughts in this reading, as explained in the reading, that this contrast between openness, receptivity, being attuned to others, even as we read in the affirmation, to quell our inclinations so that my mind can be open to the wisdom guidance of my soul. Now, quelling our inclinations doesn't mean any inclination we have should be suppressed. What it means is I hesitate, I pause before acting. Because your inclination may be right, but we still have to check it out. So in other words, whatever my first impulse is, let me hold that for a moment before pulling the trigger. And if the impulse is to pull the trigger, let me not pull the trigger. Maybe something else. So many of our inclinations will not be the right one if they're coming from a reaction. Something happens and we want to react, but we can pause. We may even choose the same action that we would have, but we might do it calmly. We might say, if someone says, can you get this for me? We might pause and then say, I'm happy to get it. Whereas, without quelling the inclination, we could say, I'm happy to get it. You see, it's just, let me get you the 1,000th thing while you have gotten me 0. That it's just, the way we act and the place from which we act. Unconsciously, immediately, knee-jerk reactions are usually not the best ones, and they don't usually lead to the results that we're looking for. If we're seeking more understanding of other people, let us be more understanding of them and more understanding of ourselves, and ask God for the rest. And then maybe you'll find good friends with whom you can share. They may not be where you're looking, they may be elsewhere. But, meaning you may not get it through the person you're looking to, but you may get it in many, many other places. And so, is it fair? Listen, it's better to have friends anywhere. How many people in this world, and it's becoming more and more evident, not just because of COVID, but just in general, people are lonely. People are seeking meaning, seeking community. And of course, we saw during COVID, when everybody was homebound, that the removal of all the distractions that can kind of keep us going, distracting us from that loneliness, made that loneliness much more intense. What to speak of the isolation and everything else. It was a hard time no matter what. But let us not take for granted our own community. It's one of the great gifts that Master gave us and that he purposely made as part of his mission. Kriya Yoga, interpreting the scriptures, showing the connectedness like we just read, and then also community. Because our own efforts become amplified when we are supported by others. And yet our own efforts amplify when we have other people to sort of share with. You see, in other words, community is a good example too. Mix with others to draw on their strength and also on the strength of a similar vibration, a positive vibration. But at the same time, in community, you get to share your own strength with people who are interested. How often, for example, may we even have something positive to say, and people say, oh, come off it, don't always be so positive. It's annoying. If somebody's in a grumpy frame of mind, you might start by agreeing with them. Yeah, it is pretty terrible, and after all, it's just so bad, all these things that have happened, and I know the power has been off for 5 minutes, and it's just unconscionable. But on the other hand, at least we have an inverter and we have fans, and at least it's not too hot. And, and after all, we're not having bombs dropped on our head like some people. Oh, yeah, I guess. Feels like a bomb. But that we start out with where they are rather than saying, why be upset about such a trivial thing? Not only is that not likely to meet with the person where they are, but on another level, it's actually denying the reality of their feelings. The reason for their feelings may be trivial. It's on the surface, but we don't know. Someone may be so hurt and so frustrated and feel so sort of uncared for because of the past, that one little thing like the power going off triggers all those feelings. And if we could see what was behind that reaction, we might feel this is really significant, and we might feel instantly compassionate towards the person rather than just misreading the surface. But of course that's true for ourselves also, that little thing may happen to upset us, but it may be because of other upsets. In fact, Master said that for devotees, when they come into a new life, sometimes just a little touch of suffering is all that's needed to awaken them to the spiritual path. And so it may be ridiculous that their reason for joining the path. I know one person left for a spiritual life. His uncle spoke sharply to him. And I forget where this was, not Jaipur or somewhere in North India. And the man just left for Rishikesh. And he made a whole life there and, had a family and everything. But he just turned his back on the whole family because they were still in communication, but he was going to have nothing to do with that kind of behavior. It seems ridiculous. Couldn't you just give him one more chance? But no, just that one touch was enough to say, forget it. Now that's an extreme example, but still, many of us will find what was the suffering that put us on the path? Well, everything was going okay, but it wasn't enough. It could be that I'm just not satisfied with my life, as fine as it is. It's still not enough. Or it could be something else, just even a trivial heartbreak of childhood could be enough to say, that's right, this is earth, I forgot. Okay, we've got to seek something better inside. And so, just as within community, the strength of others is something you can be open to then stand on your own 2 feet. Conversely, you also have the freedom to give and share just vibrationally even with others who are like-minded. So on the spiritual path, it isn't that we are open and weak, but the openness to the Guru makes us stronger. And to put it another way, if none of this really resonates for you clearly yet, that the whole purpose of the spiritual path is to help you to stand on your own 2 feet. It's to make you strong in yourself. And so that's part of what coming into balance means. Much is made of yoga in terms of improving our balance, especially if we think of the asanas. But the thought that I have to come to my center. So if we lean too much in one direction, always agreeing, always pleasing, always telling people what we think they want to hear, we may need to come more to the center, not of telling them what we know they don't want to hear, but of perhaps being quiet a little bit, not so eager to jump out with the first words. See where they really are, really to listen, and also to see where am I? Because we can get lost in outward identification, putting energy out just for that person. On the other hand, suppose we never think of other people. Easy. I only think of one person. Well, then it would be helpful, even just to serve, even against our interest, even against our will. I don't mean act against our interest. We don't have the interest, but we'll do it, because you find such freedom in serving, that I get a relief from these constant thoughts of me. As one of Swamiji's songs begins, I, my, me, mine. And it's set to a lovely little melody, and then other people start singing the same thing but in different ways, and it starts to even almost become cacophony, but because it's what Swamiji wrote, it's always still beautiful. But still, that competing of I, my, me, mine. Even Swamiji's brother said to his mother, when his brother was quite young, and his mother said something about, that's my chair, or something like that, and his brother looked at her and said, no, not my is me, Robert. Anything, and no one could use the word my except him, because everything that was, he just could see it from his perspective. She couldn't say my, because that was his word. And so, we can laugh, but yet it's funny how easily we can think that, how we can extrapolate or extend our own experience to everyone. They say there are 2 kinds of people in this world, those who say that there are 2 kinds of people and those who don't. You see, this concept of classifying everybody, those who are like me and those who are not. Nobody's really like you. The people may have similarities, but you are unique in that way, which is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing if we realize that we're uniquely loved by God, and it's a curse if we think we're the only one who is. You see, or we're the only one who's not loved by God. It's not that way. So don't get too caught up in our own particulars, and to be open to what is Master wanting for me. And usually it's pretty easy to see. Whatever wall we've been beating our head against repeatedly, Master is trying to help us to get through. And maybe the way to get through is to keep on trying. Maybe the way is to take a step back. But always the first step is to just get calm. Get centered. Come back to meditation. Listen. Be intuitive. Open yourself to your intuition. And say, help me, what do you want? He may say, put this aside for a while. Come back to it in a month. He may say, one more bash and you'll be through, but use your hand, not your head, to get through the wall. He may say, let me help, because he's helping all the time. So this attunement is, again, people usually fall on one side or the other of it, that, why should I be attuned only to Master? For example, that's one way of resisting the attunement, is to say, I want to be open to the truth through Master, but there are so many Masters, so many teachings, I want to be open to all of those truths too. Why limit myself? And again, before taking discipleship, that's a perfectly reasonable attitude and a perfectly reasonable action. But after taking discipleship, it's making a commitment to go deep in one particular teaching, because you gain an experience by going deep that you don't get any other way. Think of a place that you lived for a long period of time, whether in Chennai or a neighborhood of Chennai or somewhere else. You really get to know the place. For us, it was Alwarpet, to the point that even after we moved here, when we went shopping, we would go back to Alwarpet because we knew those shops. Same shops here, but we knew those people, and so we just sort of had that orbit, so we just knew it well. But if you hadn't lived in a place, if you just visit a place that you've just been to, on vacation or whatever, it's all new. And of course, that has its own attraction for a time. But it's not home, and you don't get the depth of relationship, the depth of experience, understanding, this, Sanadi Road is blocked, let's go, we can take this thing and take the U-turn through the hole in the fence. All of that, hole in the wall. There used to be a hole in the wall in Anasale that we could always take a little sneaky U-turn. Now they've closed it. But, that all these things when it's within your orbit. And so, in the same way, we gain that depth on one path. Why that desire, then, to continue seeking? It usually just comes from restlessness. When something is new, it's exciting. And when we find ourselves unexcited, rather than finding wholesome ways on this path to fill that, one can be tempted to just, let me read some other new book, see what I can get out of it. It's not wrong, but it's not right either. And I think I'll leave it at that. As Anantaji said, do you know what's just like Master's teachings? Master's teachings. And it's not that we're trying to say they're the best for the whole world, but they're the best for us. This is the choice we have made, for good reason. And this is what will lead us to freedom. As Master said, you don't need anything else. And meaning it's enough. So when we feel that restlessness, let's try to address it in other ways. Call a friend, watch a video, read a book, meditate, energize. Sometimes we're too restless to just meditate, meaning we should always include energization in our sadhana. But when we're trying to get out of restlessness, it's often better to use the body, get some of that energy out. Maybe we're restless because we're upset about something. Introspect and say, what's bothering me? Why am I trying to get away from this moment? Is there some upset that's here? Let me look at that. Listen to some of Swamiji's music. Better yet, sing along with it. Because in that singing, we get purified. And also, another great solution is to pray for others, which may seem strange. Let me pray for myself. Well, maybe, and that's not wrong, especially sharing your concerns with Master. They're not on your shoulders alone, not by a long shot. But to pray for others, giving that energy, thinking of, well, my gosh, I have this problem, but this person has this spouse who has, a problem, and this person is recovering from an accident, and I don't have any of those things. Let me send some prayer energy out, because the channel is blessed by that which flows through it. You will be healed in the process of sending healing to others. And so you could say it's sort of a selfish motive, but you could say it's a divinely selfish motive, and better to help others even with a selfish motive, which is at the heart of everything. I mean, as Swamiji said, the avatars would not come and help other people if they knew it would lead to their own destruction, if it would lead them into hell. They do say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but anyway, no, that's not that. So the feeling of, I know this will help me, but let me also help others. And when we share those blessings, that flow is increased. It's not like material possessions that when you give it away, now you have less than you had. It's an energetic thing, altogether different. So on the other side of attunement, I said there are two sides in which people can fall. The other side can be just, I surrender. I surrender completely. And that's a beautiful attitude if executed correctly. Often I hear it talked about. But, one person came to me with the Level 3 Part 1 class on discipleship, and she said, why do I have to read this book? I know that it's Handbook of Discipleship. I know that the goal of discipleship is to surrender completely to the Guru, to obey. And that is what I am here to do, so why I have to read this book? I said, you're saying I'm so obedient that I will disobey. Is the Guru asking you to read the book? Not me. It's, this is the book that comes with the class, Swami Kriyananda, Master's Teachings on Discipleship. I mean, have you been Yogananda's disciple before? That's meaning in this life, so therefore you know it all and don't need to read the book? Have you been a disciple of any path before? Because most of that book is about discipleship on any path. How any disciple should relate to his or her guru. And so she laughed, and she was good-natured about it. And she said, no, you're right, I'll read the book. And she said, it's a wonderful book when she read it. But we will have, I appreciated that she was open about it, because we will all have these mental resistances, these things that we've decided. And so even in saying, I surrender completely, it's a good affirmation, but what does it mean? Because if we really could surrender completely, we would be in God. It's true, that's the way to God. But who is it that surrenders? It's the ego. That's why in the Mahabharata, Master explained that the ego, because the Mahabharata also represents the inner psychological struggle that we all go through. And he said the ego is represented by Bhishma. And for a lot of reasons, first of all, because that's what Lahiri Mahashai said, and that's what Vyasa, said to Master. But anyway, that's a longer story, obviously. But the grandfather of all the qualities, good and bad. And remember, Bhishma is not, as the ego, which we may think of as the enemy. Bhishma is not a bad guy. He's a wonderful guy in many ways. But when the battle comes, he picks the wrong side. Out of family attachment and a false sense of duty, we could say. But my point here, because I said it's the ego that surrenders, that's Bhishma's boon. Remember? In fact, when he gets his name Bhishma, terrible vow, why does he get it? Because he vows that he will never get married, and the whole world shakes. Anyway, I always laugh at that of all things. That's the worst thing he could. It's because he's saying he has a right to the throne, and so he's surrendering that right. So it's more than that, but still, quite something. So anyway, his terrible vow, he gets the rose petals and the blessings, and his boon that he chooses is, I will only die, let me only die when I choose, when I wish. And that's exactly what happens with the ego. Even laying on a bed of arrows after the battle, still alive. And even after Bhishma recites, Vishnu Sahasranama and everything, kingship, all these things, then he says, I surrender myself, and he goes. And so in that's the ego goes the same way. So if we really could surrender, then great. We would probably poof and head right into the astral world. So it's a beautiful attitude, but it needs to be balanced with this concept of self-reliance that we've been talking about. I have the strength, and from that position of strength, surrender is one thought, but Swamiji also gave the phrase or the word self-offering. And self-offering has a dynamic energy to it. Surrender too much can be, God, I surrender to these events of which I have no control over anyway, and so I might as well surrender. I allow the temperature to be as hot as it is. I allow for these people to act this way. Well, what choice do we have? So it's not a great heroic surrender. And again, surrender in the sense of giving, what are you giving up? Giving up powerlessness is not helpful. And again, what did I just say about being strong in ourselves? How does that balance with surrender? Self-offering. Whatever I have, I give. In whatever way I can help, I help. Whatever even is on my mind, in my heart, even upsetting, even feeling that I'm sort of not worthy and hiding it from you, I open and I share that. That's a kind of surrender too, breaking down our walls. Listen, we're only as good as we are, and that's only as good as we need to be in this moment. What matters not is where we are, but where we are headed. As Swamiji said, if you're going to evaluate yourself at all, which is already a pretty tricky business, evaluate yourself by your intentions, by your aspirations, by your goals, spiritual goals, rather than your present reality. Because that really is what matters. Because we can come into this life full of good karma and whatever that can help us just be fine for a time. And if it gets used up without us putting that good karma in the bank, then we come back to the struggle. And so, whereas we can come in with paying off some difficult karma, and sometimes that's what life is about in the beginning, is just paying off hard karma, especially when you don't have freedom. I mean, as a child, for example, too, we don't have a lot of freedom. And that may just be paying off some difficult karma and learning the lessons or being reminded of the suffering, as I was saying earlier, to put us back on the path. But this attunement to Master, as Swamiji hinted at in the reading, he said when Paramahansa Yogananda with his disciples, he emphasized the need for attunement. But that was the only thing he spoke about, Swamiji said, when he was with his disciples. In other words, to the public, Master spoke on many topics. Within the ashram, to the disciples, he spoke only of attunement. On one level, I think it's because that's a subtle topic. On another, because it's the easiest thing to save us from everything. We can just check, how's my attunement? Am I feeling close to Swamiji? Am I feeling close to Master? Am I not? Am I feeling open-hearted? Am I not? Am I smiling or not? That's the easiest way. And then if I'm not, let me get back in tune first before anything. Because we can say, no, let me analyze, but our thoughts may be guided by upset feelings. Our thoughts may be guided by even the sort of materialistic or Maya energies that we're open to, not even realizing it, just because of the environment that we may happen to be in. And so let me get back to my center. Let me get calm. Let me say, Master, I want to be influenced by you. You guide my thoughts. And they may end up being the same thoughts, but with a lift to them, with a blessing and a power. Not because he withheld the power, and then finally we asked him enough and he said, okay, fine, you get 2 milliliters of power. It's that because we opened ourselves and we invited that in. Because Master will never come in uninvited. It's unfortunate because we can say, can't I just say I invite you once and it means for all time? No, it's a question of opening more and more and more. But that's all it is. Again, the image is sometimes used of raising the sail in the sailboat. That's the only thing you have to do to get the boat moving. The wind blows you. But you only raise the sail. You don't also blow into the sail, trying to get the boat to move. The wind will do it. But the wind will not raise the sail. And in the same way, Master won't impose. We have to do our part to say, here I am, and then he'll help with the rest. So all the things that I was saying earlier of ways that we can do that, watching a video, any video, pick any video, and that sometimes will be sweet because it may speak to exactly what you're going through in that moment. But read a book, read a quote, think about it, call a friend, share, just say, hi, how are you? You don't have to say this is the deepest inner spiritual ferment or foment, trouble I'm going through. Just talking about anything with a friend may be positive. Just getting that vibration of Master through, that Guru Bhai. Of course, coming here, tuning in online, that's always there. But just opening ourselves usually solves the problem, or at least relieves the stress of the problem if it can't be solved, rather than just hammering it out, worrying about it, holding on to it, fretting. And so really, attunement is what saves us time and time again. We've seen over the years at Ananda that those who not only wanted to be in tune, fought to try to stay in tune, were in tune. Not that we could judge anyone's attunement, and we shouldn't even try. It's just not wholesome to do so. You're in tune, you're not in tune. No, not that at all. But I just mean over time seeing someone's efforts to deepen their own attunement, it's the greatest protection. If you've ever been concerned about leaving the path, which I know is a thought that I've had, I think it's a thought from past lifetimes. Memories of having left the path, subconsciously, and just thinking, oh God, no, please, not again. I finally got it together. At least let me finish level 4. No, I'm joking. And beyond, in other words, don't interrupt the progress I'm on. Level 6, level 7, how long did it take us to find the path in this life? Not that, that was wrong, it's a good thing and all that. We say all of that, especially when it comes later in life. No, it's fine. But still, what about the suffering that we ourselves endured up to that point? Do we want that again? And so, that sense of that attunement is what keeps you steady. Swamiji even wrote that about some of his brother disciples who left the path in Master's lifetime. He said that, because of dry periods is often what happens. That's what I was sort of alluding to before with restlessness. That if we get bored, if we get dry, if we're not getting the same thrill, then, let me wander and see what else can give it to me. And so to instead, as Swamiji said, regular meditation, attunement, devotion would have helped them to get through that. If you just have the practice, if you also have friends, community, to connect to. Say, yeah, I feel uninspired. I think I'll just come to the temple and sit in a dark corner. But you see, there is no dark corner. No matter how much darkness you think you bring to it, it's not darkness at all. Master greets you. The Hari Mahashai winks at you from the photo. You're always welcome. And also that, as Sister Gyanamata said, when devotion is lacking, duty must fill the breach. Meaning must take the place. So in other words, even if we're not just, as she said, you can't expect, Master I think said, you can't expect a sort of beautiful rose blossom of devotion every day in your garden. It may be that we get tests. We do. We know we do. But it's those tests that give us the strength that we want. And it's those tests very, very likely that are bringing out the things in us that are holding us back in our devotion. Meaning, this is part of the problem, then this and what we're fighting against is part of the cure. So don't resist it. Say, that's fine, I want to understand, I want to move through it. Even 1 inch, I will celebrate as a victory if it seems like a hard test and it seems like an ongoing, years-long one. 1 inch of more calmness, 1 inch of more cheerfulness, I will celebrate and hang on to, and again identify with, as Swamiji had said in that story of him giving up smoking. Every time he came back to it as a young man, he said, I haven't yet succeeded. as opposed to I failed again, and what's the use of trying? It's the 100th time. There's no point. I'll never make it. He said that way every slip in his resolution was an affirmation of eventual success. And after, I forget, 6 months or whatever it was, he was able to give it up forever. And that's a very helpful thing to say to ourselves too. I don't want this. Even if we're doing it, we're drawn into it. I don't want this. To say it in the moment is the best. But even if not, then after. I don't want this. And to say, I do want that. Even the wanting will get us there. Because, as Master said, desire plus energy directed to fulfillment. That's what willpower is. We need to have a desire. Even the desire for freedom is a desire. So it's not the desire is wrong. It's the desire that takes us out of desires. So to say that to ourselves truthfully, I want freedom. I want happiness all the time. And to then put energy and power behind that. So remember that attunement is really everything. And one easy way of keeping in tune is just what you're doing, connecting with the community. Because the vibration of each other, the vibration of the temple, the vibration of all of us being together, physically or otherwise, it has an effect of just uplifting us. Everybody's collective strength and Master through them and Master coming to each one means that what? There are 10, 20, 30, 40 copies of Master all around us. And it just, that's actually the power of satsang, is that each week we come together to sort of wipe the slate clean and fill up the tanks to make it through another week. And if we find ourselves perhaps by the end of the week lagging a bit and then come back to the petrol pump. And so that's really part of why Master instituted that pattern, and then Swamiji followed that, and we do now, all of us throughout Ananda, is just to get refilled, re-inspired. And it comes very easily. In other words, you don't even have to do a lot of research. You just have to move the feet and get in the auto and then get out of the auto and walk in the temple, and that's it. And then Master takes care of the rest. So, again, whenever we feel any kind of dis-ease, uneasiness, just keep in mind, just how can I help with my attunement, Master? And not in a heavy way, like, oh, my attunement is all wrong. No, just how can I get back in tune, or how can I get more in tune? Master, how can you come closer to me and I come closer to you? God bless you.